Welcome to an amazing Tuesday. Another world in the, another life, another day in the life of a crazy real estate market. Not going to disappoint tonight. Tonight we're talking about the big R word, recession. A lot of talk about recession coming. Rates took a dive last week. We're going to dig into that. We're going to talk about how that affects the housing market and if there really is a big shift coming to the market. Is the housing market going to be in a recession? Is the housing market already in a recession? We're going to talk about it. We're also going to dig in a little bit to the commission stuff that we've been talking about. Second half of the show, we'll dig into that. I know you guys have a lot of questions that have come up around the big changes that are coming, so we're going to dig into that as well. But I got a guest tonight. We're going to bring him on, and we're going to have a conversation. So this particular guy, I'm going to get rid of this music here. This particular friend of mine comes from all the way, I'm in Massachusetts, and he's coming all the way from the other side of the planet. No, not really. A place where there's actually warm weather and nice weather, unlike here, hot and just and humid and all the things. Sunny SoCal. And he's been on the show, but you know what? It's been a while. So I'm super, 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 super stoked to bring on my friend, Mr. Joe Parada.
Hi, how's it going?
Hey, Joe.
Hi.
How you doing?
Good. It's, you know what? It's always so much fun to be on your streams and on your show because we always talk about the good stuff and we've got great interaction from the chat usually. So I'm looking forward to it. And yes, you're right. It is warm and beautiful here today. Let's see, right now, I believe it's 101, a little bit on a heat wave. Yeah, but it's gorgeous today. It's beautiful outside, a little breezy. So, it's just another California summer day.
Yeah, you can stop right there. Thank you very much. Keep that, the rest of that information, weather report to yourself, because, those of us don't live in SoCal or in San Diego or any of the other nice, beautiful places.
Yeah. I don't mean to rub it in. I'm sorry.
There we go. No, it's good. Hey, you know what? Somebody's got to suck up the sun, and I'm glad that you can partake and maybe send some our way. But hey, this news about talking about recession, and there was a lot happened in the market. There's a lot happened in the bond market, stock market was all over the place. Took some crazy moves.
Crazy right now.
Absolutely bonkers. And the rates, it's just very interesting because we all kind of, assume that the rates are going to be closely tied and only move when the Fed meets and all the things. And, the real estate market, the real estate mortgage rate is not that way, so it very much, it goes with the flow and is a changeable situation. I'm all tongue-tied tonight. So you got me all tongue-tied because of your stinking good weather, and I'm very jealous. So,
it's interesting. We were talking about the, how rates usually kind of move in lockstep, interest rates, the bank rate. One of the things that I talked about on my live stream last Wednesday is we kind of were talking about how a lot of the times the mortgage rate market will bake in preconceived rate cuts that look like it happen. So, when the Fed announces, if they announce, hey, we've cut rates, consumers out there need to realize that might not mean mortgage rates take another dip because they've already been baked in. So that was a question from one of the commenters I had on my stream was, hey, if Jerome Powell and the Fed say, we're reducing rates X amount, does that mean mortgage rates will automatically decrease? And it's kind of a yes and no. Yes, they'll go down, but maybe not if they've already been baked into the rate, which a lot of major mortgage companies and banks do.
Right. Absolutely. And pretty much the trend, right, is that mortgage rates typically follow, what the Fed does. It pretty much follows, in unison. So typically the Fed adjusts their rate, the mortgage rate typically follows. But it's not attached. Correct. A lot of people think it's attached and it's not. Right. And the rate, the mortgage rate it's very affected by the rumor mill. Very affected. Very much. Right. So so it's not a matter of, the job market and it did this, so we're going to look at it from an analytical perspective, and we're going to do this. I mean, they obviously do that to a certain degree, but it's also a feeling.
Yep.
It's also based on a feeling. If they think that something's going to happen in XYZ and in the job market or whatnot, then all of a sudden the rate across the board will start to dip down. It'll start to dip down. So it's very interesting.
We saw evidence of that in the end of 2023 when the Fed said, hey, or it wasn't the Fed, but it was these different think tanks and financial groups said, we're going to get 7 rate cuts in 2024, which we haven't gotten one yet. So they were a little wrong. But even with that news, interest rates in November and December ticked down a little bit just from that news itself. That was, as you put it so well, in the rumor mill.
In the rumor mill. Well, I want to dig into like this article from Mortgage News Daily that kind of talked about, that just hits on this topic, for that I wanted to dig into. And then I want to kind of get into like recession, because I think it's important. I want those that are watching to understand, the impact. Like it's, you have an economic recession and you have a housing market recession. They're two separate things.
Yep.
And one may be happening and the other may not be.
Great point.
And so it's the type of thing. And that also is all affected by the rumor mill, because if all of a sudden people are like, oh, we're in a recession, I better stop buying. Yep. Well, guess what that does? That actually insinuates and produces a recession because people stop buying. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's a self-fulfilling prophecy to a certain degree. We got a bunch of awesome people. Kate D, Bubba Laniana, Nadine Green, welcome from Connecticut. All right, let's go. I got some of my East Coast people.
I was going to say, I have nothing. There's nothing west of the Mississippi in chat yhat. Hopefully,
so those
my side of the state.
Those joining, Joe's from West Coast, SoCal, Southern California. So we can all just be all gripey about the fact that he has nice weather. Hey, Leah, Northern Virginia, good to see you. Good to see you. All right, let's dig into this this stuff. I got some good stuff that I actually researched here for you guys. So, so this article, so it was from Mortgage News Daily, which is I think it's a very reputable source of information. I go to it all the time. And so rates plummet as the market buys into the big shift. And that title in itself kind of talks about, lends itself to what we were just talking about, as far as like the rates buying into what's actually happening in the market. It's not necessarily a reflection one way or another sometimes. The events of this past week serve as an exclamation point. And this article is from Friday. Okay, so this past Friday. The events of this past week have served. That is past. Yeah, sorry. The events of this past week serve as an exclamation point in one of the many sentences that tells the story of the big shift away from the generational high rates that we've seen in the end of 2023. So they're talking a little bit about a shift in mortgage rates. We're going to talk about the shift in the housing market in a bit. The story has its ups and downs since then, but it has been going fairly well for fans of low rates over the past 3 months. In fact, the last 3 months marked the first successful defeat of what had looked like yet another false start in the road towards lower rates, which we've seen quite a few times, right, Joe? It's like we think the signs are there that the rates, I mean, I don't know how many times I feel like a broken record that you tell people like, hey, it's, it looks like things are going to happen. And then all of a sudden, like, it's a classic, sorry.
Exactly.
Like it's not going to happen.
I feel like for basically the entire year, it's been like, oh, rates are going to go down next month. The Fed said they're going to cut rates next month. And here we are in August, although now September is looking pretty dang likely, but I won't be surprised if it doesn't happen.
Don't you feel like a kid being promised candy?
It's exactly.
And you're like, and then it's like, if you do this one thing, you get the candy, And then you get there and you're like,
now you've got to do that one thing again.
Yeah. And you're like, wait, what? So it says the rate, and this gets a little bit into the weeds, which I don't want to do. And in all honesty, Joe, like knowing the intricacies of the mortgage market is not my forte. I leave that to the experts.
Yep.
High level stuff is really where I'm at. If it gets any deeper, I rely on the experts, and because for sure I don't want to misinterpret it, but having a high level understanding in terms of like, the treasury yields and, from a consumer standpoint, just seeing that, on the news or
Yep.
being reported. So you have like, okay, now I can understand why it's doing what it's doing. But it says measured in terms of 10-year treasury yields, long-term rates have only made 3 attempts to drop more than 0.5% since they began skyrocketing in 2022. The first 2 attempts ultimately gave way to new highs. If rates had moved just a bit higher a few months ago, it would have been happening all over again. So that's why it's not like, Groundhog Day. It goes into saying, it says May through July could be described as cautiously optimistic. I use that term constantly, cautiously optimistic on everything in the market, especially these days, due to well-received improvements in inflation data, which is true. The inflation data did improve. During this time, the Fed said it was feeling more and more confident about cutting rates, but that it could be patient due to a labor market that was still rather strong, which the jobs market, the jobs reports that had come out previously were, right? And that's why it was like, why aren't they doing anything? It's like, we're not there yet. We're not there yet. Similar state sentiments were shared by the Fed as recently as this week, but that was before this week's job report came out. So that was the thing that was the catalyst this week, the jobs report. And the jobs report came out, and that is what put everybody into a frenzy. Right. And actually sent everybody into, like, oh my gosh, what's happening? This is shaping up. And I actually have, and I'm not going to go through this, to be honest, unless somebody in the chat wants me to go through all these numbers. I'm really, my eyes glaze over after a while, when you get to too much into the weeds. And I literally just wanted to just cover the skim, give you a high level view, because I have other, some really good stuff, some really, really good stuff. So I wanted to get into, let's see here. Yes, I wanted to get into this article right here. And then we can really get into discussing stuff. Here we go. So this was CNBC, which I don't typically use them as a resource a lot, but it's a good article. Mortgage rates plunged to the lowest level in more than a year after weak employment report. So the key points, the average rate, which right now, this article again was on Friday. Average rate for the popular 30-year fixed mortgage dropped 22 basis points to 6.4%, according to Mortgage News Daily, which we were just on. And that dropped, I believe, a little bit lower, which we're gonna see that, and I'm gonna show you the graph and where we're at right this very minute in a second. The drop followed a weaker than expected monthly employment report, which sent bond yields falling fast, and the recent high on the 30-year fixed mortgage. The recent high on the 30-year fixed mortgage was 7.52% in late April, and home sales have been falling ever since, largely because of those rates.
Talk about the amazing gain there. From April to, it was 7.6 or whatever it said, and now here we are in August, and we're at 6.4. That's a considerable amount of relief for consumers to have in such a short period of time. And it could even improve further. We'll see. So
someone had asked a couple times on previous live streams, when is a good time to refinance, right?
Yes.
And we've talked about that in the past, and there's a lot of schools of thought, but typically my understanding, or based on the information that I get from lenders that look at the big picture, you were looking at the recapture rate. How much is it going to cost if I spend X amount of dollars for a refinance? How many years is it going to take to break even? If it costs you $5,000 to refinance your mortgage, down, and so you save $200 a month, well, you've got to do that math to say, okay, how many months do I need? How many years do I need? That will it take to erase that debt to then actually become a gain.
Mhm.
And usually it's anywhere between, it could be 5 to 7 years, right? On average. So you want to make sure that rate is a big enough gap. That's why you don't want to do like 0.25% or 0.5% or even 0.75%.
Right.
Because the gain is not enough. I mean,
Yep.
and then it spreads it out over a longer period of time. And then if you end up selling or moving, before you actually realize that gain, then it was totally kind of pointless to do it.
Yep.
The rule of thumb is 1%. That's what I typically recommend to people. And of course, you take this with a grain of salt, because I will follow this with a big asterisk.
Yep.
Talk to your lender, talk to your mortgage, your financial advisor. But the rough rule of thumb is 1%. At 6.4%, we're at 1%.
Yep. And
we're at 1%.
And that's just from an April high. There were some people, and again, depending on your credit, the type of loan, the equity in the house in your specific market. I mean, there were some people that were getting, 7.7, 7.8, and maybe their credits improved since they've purchased their home. They could be closer to the 0.25% number, which is obviously going to make a pretty marked increase in how much money you're going to save on a monthly payment if you can drop your interest rate by over 1%.
Right.
That's going to be
100%. Absolutely. Every penny counts in this market. Every penny counts, right? So this article goes on to say the average rate, again, the article is from Friday. It says the average rate on the popular 30-year fixed mortgage dropped 22 basis points, like we saw in the previous article, lowest since April 2023. The 15-year, for those that are holding 15-year notes, 5.89%, lowest since May 23. And this was followed by the weaker than expected monthly employment report, which sent bond yields falling fast. So this was the cause and the effect. The employment report came out, the jobs market report came out, and then bond market, stock market, heyday, craziness, right? Yeah. This Matthew Graham, who is the chief operating officer over at Mortgage News Daily, says between the Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell's equivocal openness to multiple cuts in 2024 on Wednesday, and this morning's sharply weaker jobs report, something Powell didn't know about on Wednesday, the more aggressive rate cuts, the more aggressive rate cut narrative is quickly coming into focus.
Yep.
So very interesting. Very interesting. It says there are still 2 inflation reports and another employment report due before the Fed's September meeting. If they don't offer strong counterpoints to recent data, the rate cut cycle has not only begun, it will likely to involve a certain sense of urgency. So what does that mean? That means, right, if we look at there isn't marked improvement in inflation, right? Or there's an adjustment in inflation and still not an improvement in the employment report. It's almost certain, right, that they're going to, that they're going to cut, that the Fed will cut the rate even more, which will kick back to the mortgage rate.
And the Fed is even, the Fed is always under pressure from the stock market. We know that Wall Street likes loose monetary policy because it stimulates spending and buying and things like that. It's very interesting because Wall Street is also applying pressure to the Fed, even more so than normal, because Wall Street is looking at the same, economic reports as the Fed is, but the Wall Street is also facing another issue right now, and that is the slide in all of the tech stocks, mostly those concerned with AI. So Wall Street's kind of facing a little bit of a double whammy right now because they're getting hit from these, Magnificent Seven and a lot of these AI-based stocks that have been pumping a lot of money back into Wall Street for the entire year, which is why Wall Street's been doing so well. And now between, lackluster jobs report, the falling AI, and rates still staying high, I saw an article today that was basically, Wall Street is basically begging the Fed to cut rates because they don't want the economy to backslide and have it backfire. But quite honestly, as we know, Jerome Powell, the whole Fed, they have a very, very difficult job. They're easy people to hate. what they're trying to do is not easy. They're trying to generate a very soft landing out of a very uncertain time, which was the pandemic. And what the Fed is doing is no small task, and that commands a certain amount of respect.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to put that job. I wouldn't want to step into his shoes for sure.
No.
But I think the biggest thing is that you look at the rates, and we're looking at a very small segment. We're looking at the housing market, right? And the individual homeowner and their ability to purchase a home and so forth. The reality of it is it's so much bigger than that.
Yeah.
It's so much bigger than that. And what I mean by that is, if a homeowner, if a first-time home buyer or a move-up buyer, any buyer, can't afford to make that purchase, they can't afford to sell and buy, or buy their first house. They can't make that jump because these rates are too high. That means that every potential business that is touched by that new home purchase is affected.
Yep.
So contractors, plumbers, big box stores,
Yeah.
Amazon, Walmart,
and even your low-level people. You're right. Even people like, your housekeepers and your gardeners. We're not even talking about major corporations. We're talking your handymen, all sorts of little things that all of a sudden are impacted by that.
So think about this. Think about how things are connected. Wouldn't that be, and I don't know the intricacies of the job market. I don't. And I'm not pretending that I do. However, from a lowly homeowner myself, and an average consumer, if the housing market has such a big impact on all of these businesses, and the housing market sales are down tremendously, well, doesn't it make sense that these plumbers, these contractors, these big box stores, they're laying people off?
Yep.
Because they don't have the business to support them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
Bubble Lania, thanks for jumping on the stream. My stocks have lost so much value already. Mentally preparing myself for a sod house in the Dust Bowl type lifestyle for a while. I love that. Mentally preparing myself for a sod house in the Dust Bowl. I love that. Yeah, I think there's a certain amount of benefit to tightening our belts every now and then, right?
Yep.
Like, I feel like we get comfortable, and it's like, okay, we're getting on a you get on a roll, get used to, accustomed to certain lifestyles, and then all of a sudden, like, the brakes go on. You're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna a reality check. I'm gonna pull back. Okay, so I don't need that thing. I don't need to eat out. I don't, I'm doing that myself, trying to be smart, all the things, try to, make sure that, taking care of the economic world of the Sylvester household. Right. Although I have to tell you that I had my well company out yesterday. I was having an issue with my well, my pressure tank, and he had this DeWalt light with the DeWalt battery, and it was like, he's like, oh yeah, it's on sale for 50% off on Amazon. I'm like, oh, I have to have that. Like, I have DeWalt tools. I have to have that in my arsenal. No reason. And didn't I end up using it today? But anyways, I that was not a necessity, but it was $60. I crumbled. I digress, right? This is an investment in the house, right? But yeah, it's you know what though? It's just everything's on a cycle. Everything's on a cycle.
Well, and you put it well, yeah, like things go up, things go down. Sometimes
that's a song,
It's true.
What comes up? I just probably lost like 40 people by singing. I apologize. Before I got into real estate, I was a musician. I was in a band. Do you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah, I dropped out of college, and I was in a band. I played classically trained pianist, but I was blues rock band. But they never put me in front of a microphone. I wonder why. So there you go. Just putting that out there. So yeah, I'll pretend to sing. But so this is the state of affairs. I just wanted to throw this up. So this is, over the course of the last year, where mortgage rates are at, and you can see like where that dip was right here, right?
Yep.
And it was actually at 6.34% yesterday. and it shot up a little bit. So like, but that's the way it goes. Like if you're watching this, you're like, oh gosh, it's going up again. It's like, well, that's the nature of the beast. Like you can see where the peak was in October 18th. They actually had an 8%, but it's been steadily, a little drop, and then it goes up, and then a big drop, and this is normal. Like December there's always, an adjustment downward. The Fed, it doesn't meet the Congress takes a vacation, all the things, and so that's totally normal. And then it goes, and then it went back up again. We're up towards 7.52%. We're like you just said, take the candy, give you promise the candy, take it away. What the heck? But then it's been a slow, steady downturn. But this was definitely the biggest. And so I wonder, what's going to happen tomorrow? What's going to happen tomorrow? And as when you look at things like this, like we were talking about earlier, the talk is almost as threatening as the data.
Yes.
Like you start talking recession, you start saying the words.
Yep.
And people like Babylania will say, that's a direct response to the stocks, but still, if you see your stocks and then you hear in the news the possible, everything's being set up, which I have an article for that. Aha. I love digging into this stuff. So this was off of Fortune magazine. So this article kind of illustrates what I was about to say, which is about, what does a recession look like? Like, if you hear the R word, and you hear, okay, well, what does that mean? What are we in? Are we out? There's threat of it. How close are we? What does it all mean? So this article came out, this was like yesterday, and it said the U.S. is uncomfortably close. We're not in a recession. We're not in a recession yet. That's the magic word.
Yeah. And I think it's important to also realize that, for a lot of people, and for probably most of the people in the chat, the last recession that we had, they'll say that the last recession that we had was in COVID in 2020. That wasn't really a recession. It lasted for like 3 months because everything was closed. Right. The last real recession that we had was 2008 to 2012. I mean, that was the last real one where it was extremely noticeable, big, affected everyone. So a lot of people, when I think, and humans are, we're animals, and typically bad things tend to stick in our memory better than good things. So it's important to realize that just because the word recession comes up it doesn't mean necessarily there's going to be this meltdown of the financial system, or there's going to be this, there's different varieties of recessions. The housing market could be unaffected. In the last recession, 2008, the housing market was not. It was actually the driver of the recession, which is quite rare. So it's important as we start talking about, are we in a recession? What is a recession? Just keep in mind that a recession doesn't necessarily mean like total decimation for everyone. And there's different degrees that go into it.
Well, that is actually a great point, because I heard, and I agree with this. I heard the other day, and I from a very reliable source, and I do agree with his particular school of thought. I believe we're in, and have been in, a housing recession. We've been in a housing recession for about a year, but it's a certain type of housing recession, which we're going to get into next, actually, real quick. So and yet things still are going on. We're still the bottom hasn't fallen out. Prices are not plummeting, but technically, we're already there. Now the economy is starting to follow potentially. So this is former Federal Reserve economist Claudia Sahm. Is that how you say her last name?
That's what I would go with. I'd go with Sahm too.
Okay. Said that while the U.S. isn't yet in a recession, it's uncomfortably close, and predicted central bank policymakers may recalibrate their approach to take account of increasing risks. This increase in the unemployment rate has been in the past consistent with early in recession. So it's just warning signs, right? She said on this Bloomberg television, referring to the unexpected climb in the jobless rate seen in Friday's July employment report. We might not be there, but we're getting uncomfortably close to that situation. And it goes on to say what we've been talking about with the report. Showed U.S. hiring slowed markedly, right? Markedly, while the unemployment rate rose to 4.3%, causing its 3-month moving average to exceed the 12-month low by half a percentage point and triggering the so-called SOM rule. We do not come into this in a position of strength, broadly speaking. If we look at all of what we know about the U.S. economy right now, it is very unlikely that we are in a recession. But she goes on to say that indicators for the first half of the year were not signaling a weak economy. And so things had shifted. It says the fact that the Federal Reserve is moving slow and deliberate, it's a good thing, right? Well, the last thing we need is for them them joining into that emotional energy, she said, which is true. If all of a sudden the Federal Reserve started to do, to your point, that difficult decision, if all of a sudden they started to react in a panic mode, that would be catastrophic.
Yep.
That would not be the right thing to do. But I kind of wanted to, and I won't go through this entire article, but the important thing is to know that we're not there yet. The big question is what is going to be, what is going to be the Fed's reaction? What is going to happen with the jobs market? And how do our economic leaders, approach that, to try to keep us into a safe place?
Yeah. And that's the $100 billion question of the moment, and like I was saying earlier, it's difficult to, Jerome Powell and the Fed is kind of this architect of this so-called soft landing and trying to avoid a recession and getting inflation under control. Like I said earlier, what they're doing is a almost monumental task, or what they're trying to do, the desired outcome is certainly not a straightforward thing. But it's also important for people to remember that we were coming off of a time between 2020 and 2022 where unemployment was basically like at zero. The stock market going insane, real estate prices increasing hugely. So when we are comparing figures from today versus 2 or 3 years ago, it should not come as a major surprise or shock that those metrics differ substantially. Everybody talks about the unemployment rate. The current unemployment rate is like 4.3%. Okay, 6% or less is considered full employment. So it's not like we're in uncharted territory where it's like, oh my gosh, we have these major problems. But are these numbers increasing from what they have been in the last 2 to 3 years? Yes, and that's what they're trying to get under control.
Yeah, I think the problem is, to be honest, is that because of the state of where we are now, the cost of everyday goods, groceries, the cost of gas, the cost of housing, income has not kept up with all of those increases. So when you're already sensitive and you're already stretched and you're already feeling it, the slightest little adjustment feels huge.
Yeah.
Feels huge.
You're right.
So it's in the grand scheme, these might be small, but when you take everything into consideration, that's all it takes is small tweaks, small little events to make catastrophic, impacts, and feel catastrophic, right?
You're right.
It's a tough thing. And that's why, I look, we talk a lot sometimes about like the 50-year average on the interest rate is 7%. Over the last 50 years, the average interest rate is 7%, right? And if I took that graph I had up earlier and I expanded it out, you would see in the 80s when it went up to 18%. And then you average that out. However, the cost of housing and the average income has not kept up with the average median home price.
And that's why I don't like that metric of, historically rates are low. Well, it doesn't matter. We're not in history. We're in present day.
We are in present day because 7% now,
Right.
relatively speaking,
Yeah.
is far different than 7% 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Relatively speaking, it was the percentage of income was much lower
Yep.
from a household payment than it is today.
Yeah.
So anyways, this is really like, understanding the recession as a whole. This is talk about housing stuff here. So, I wanted to just touch on that article super quick, just for, relativity. But this article, like I can't, this isn't published in 2022, right? But I wanted to get into it because the information is relative in terms of like, okay, so where's the housing market at, and what do we look for? In this article, they went into the impact of a housing market. So it says the housing market recession. A typical housing market recession occurs when home sales decline for 6 months straight. Okay. Two main forces are driving the housing market recession: increasing interest rates and increasing construction costs. When housing market recession is done, we'll enter a housing recovery cycle. Okay. Which is what we saw coming out of 08,
Yep.
09, and then it went bonkers.
2011,
This is
13.
Yep. And then they say this is the best time to buy below market value properties. Of course it is. So it talks about, if I can find the area, hold on one second. Here we go. So this is what I wanted to bring up. What is a housing market recession? So this is important. It says a housing market recession occurs when home sales decline for 6 months straight. Just mentioned that. And the National Association of Realtors just published, this one goes on to the 2022. We won't get into that. But he does go on to say that, even in 2022, those numbers where they were talking about, they didn't see a recession because of the fact that even though the inventory might be telling one tale, the housing prices may be telling one tale, the prices are telling a different tale.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that is what is you need all of the ingredients. So we have a version of a recession happening, right? We have a version of a recession happening in the housing market, but it's not a full-on housing market recession because the housing prices are still maintaining, and in most places marginally, they're not increasing as much as they were, but during the peaks,
Correct.
meaning during the high selling, the spring market, the fall market, the spring market was a wash, but things still were inching up in a lot of areas.
Yep.
So it says, what causes the apparent housing market recession? It's, increased interest rates, check.
Yep.
Increased construction costs. Well, the construction costs have come down since this article was published in 2022, right? I mean, you remember the cost of lumber during during COVID, it was like gold. You probably could have traded it on the stock market.
Yeah.
You could have gone in with backed up a Home Depot truck and to Wall Street.
Yeah.
And made a fortune.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting. And I just wanted to touch on that because, without going into it too deep, because I wanted to kind of bring some, I guess, levity or clarity, to where we're at now. Like it's a threat in the sense that it's there. Mm-hmm. Yes. If you have stocks, stocks are meant to be, it's like a crock pot. Unless you're doing it for a business, you're doing it actively, you're actively trading on a day-to-day basis. But my opinion is on the stocks, it's like, you know what? It goes up, it goes down. I don't know about you, Joe. I don't even look at my stocks. No. I don't even look at my investments. I'm not retiring for some time. So I know that's the funny thing. Let it marinate.
I take the same approach I have some cryptocurrency, and the people are always talking, it's so volatile, it's so volatile. It's like, just like stocks, you don't look it's long-term. Stocks are not meant something that you check every day. It's long-term. And all the data says that long-term stocks are a winning investment, which is why they're so dang popular.
Yes. So I wanted to dig into the, kind of the commission question stuff. Did a video several weeks ago, and it's coming. August 17th is coming. I think it's you guys in California. I think it's the 13th, right? Or something.
Yes,
I think the date
correct.
is
So
earlier for you
actually,
guys.
there's one MLS in my area that's as of the 8th, which is 2 days from now. And then my MLS will be putting into practice the removal of the BAC field on the 13th. Yeah.
Okay. So it's imminent, and that the one thing that this whole thing has done, the DOJ and the class action lawsuit, the NAR responded and said, here's a fix, and we'll pay $418 million, of which the attorneys got a disgusting amount of money. And then they put this on the table and everybody's like, yay, problem solved. And now the consumers are like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Like, it's confusing. It's absolutely confusing. So I wanted to start a conversation. So that was like, this was a comment that came up over and over and over on that video. All these changes are complicated and confusing. I've had people comment that they were thinking about buying a house and now they're like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do it. Or I'm thinking about selling the house and forget real estate agents. I don't even want to deal with the whole thing. It's a mess. And quite honestly, don't blame them. Don't blame them at all, right? Because of the fact that it's not, a lot of the information that's coming out is, depending on who you talk to, is overwhelming. So I thought what I wanted to do is on this live stream, just kind of dig into it from a very high level, kind of simplify things. Yep. More so, touch on it and you guys in the chat, if any, those watching, you have specific questions of how this works, whether you're, selling the house, whether you're buying the house, like if there's something that you're like, I don't know what this means, or, how do I approach this or whatever, please drop it in the chat and let me know, what your thoughts are. If you want to try to help you out. All right, here we go. So we've got Philippines, Anahan. Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. Anahawan or bust. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Hi Jim, put my FISBO on Facebook today. Zillow tomorrow. 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,600, 600 square feet plus, 900 triple wide manufactured home, 169,000. Looking forward to the challenge. Thanks for all your knowledge you share. You're very welcome. You're very welcome. And you know what? Fingers crossed that it goes smoothly for you. I know that manufactured homes, typically, I know in here in Massachusetts, a lot of people sell those on their own anyways, or they go through the park because they're not considered real estate. Real estate is when you own, the property and the land, or a percentage of the property and the land, which is what you'd have in a condo. Buy manufactured home, it's sitting on a piece of land, usually typically buy the land, put the manufactured home or the modular home on the land, still own the land, paying tax on the land. But a manufactured home is a little different, where there isn't a recorded deed. So when it comes to real estate agents selling it, I know a lot of real estate agents they shy away because they just either don't want to deal with it, they don't want to bother with it, or they don't know how to sell it. So, but for 169,000, seems like a pretty great price. So my fingers crossed, and you're very, very welcome. I hope very much tons of success. But so Joe, so if you are, in today's landscape, right? Yep. You're a home seller and you're getting ready to put your house on the market. You want to put your house on the market. You want to sell the house. You don't want to do it for sale by owner. I think, and we won't even get into discussion about whether you should or you shouldn't. I think some people, it totally should and it's fine. And some people think they should and they really shouldn't. And then there's some people that are like, hands down, I don't want to deal with it. And it's personal choice, right?
Yep.
But if you're in the realm of, hey, I don't want to deal with it myself, but now I don't know what to do, from a very, very high level,
yep,
the biggest change is before you'd ask the agent, what's your commission? The agent would tell you 4%, 5%, 6%, whatever it is. And then that would be it. And then you talk about what's included and marketing and all the things.
Yep.
And then they would hopefully say to you, well, a portion of that goes to the listing office and the portion of that goes to the that we will compensate the buyer agent. The
Mhm.
listing agent office compensates the buyer agent. That is no longer. So the one thing that I will tell those watching, super important, if you're meeting or when you're meeting with an agent and you ask them what the fee is, if they say to you 4%, 5%, 6%, you ask them again, how much are you charging? What is your fee? Because there a lot of agents will not separate. And I've heard the comments, I've seen the comments from agents, and there are going to be a lot of agents, right, Joe, that just are like, I'm not making this change. I'm doing business as usual, and this is the way I'm going to do it. And they're totally in violation of NAR. They totally can get in trouble, get kicked out of NAR, then get their license is in jeopardy and getting in a heap of trouble for violating the policies, right?
Mm-hmm.
But from a seller's perspective, I really want you guys to ask them, what is your fee? What is your fee? Totally separate. It's a total separate conversation. I'm hiring ABC Real Estate to help me sell my house. Okay, what is your fee? 2%, 2.5%, 3%, whatever it is. That is what I'm charging it to. That's what I'm going to pay that ABC Real Estate agent. The buyer agent, on the other hand, on the other side, and I've heard a ton of school of thought on this. I've heard a school of thought being, don't offer anything and let the buyer agent, have the buyer rather submit an offer and ask for compensation. You can certainly do that. One thing that I would say, Joe, that a marketing strategy that I've implemented is, to let people know that, buyer agents are welcome. So if the client says, no, I don't want to offer anything to the buyer agent, we'll wait and see what comes to the table, right? We don't want to send the message that we don't want buyers that aren't willing to pay, that can't pay a buyer agent or don't want to pay the buyer agent.
Which most can't.
Which most can't, right? This is brand new. A buyer paying a buyer agent, like, they've never had to do that. They can't afford it, right? Most can't. Some can, most can't. So, which means it's got to be included in the negotiations. So if you're looking to buy a house, that's the one thing that's an extra step that you're going to have to take is you make sure that you, in the offer, you put in the buyer, seller to compensate buyer agent, whatever, 2%, 2.5%, whatever is in your buyer agent agreement. You will be required to sign a buyer agent agreement after August 17th. If you're working with a real estate agent, every real estate agent in the country will require, if they tell you, oh, it's okay for this one time, they are breaking the rules of NAR, period. They're breaking the rules. Now, people break the rules all the time. But all I'm saying is, I don't know, Joe, I wouldn't want to work with somebody. I don't know that my trust factor would be, my trust meter would be at 100% if they're already like breaking the rules on their own profession.
Yeah, no.
And they're representing me, like, very interesting. So Philippines, I don't want to is I own half an acre. Well, that's very interesting. I wonder if it's where are you located? What state you're located in? I'd be interested to know. Dina says, I've had my house on the market for 2 weeks now. So naturally I signed a contract based on the old terms. With the new terms going into effect 8/17, will that affect me? So here's the thing. Almost all MLS policies are going to have addendums. You will need to sign an addendum that outlines. So if you had we're just going to say 5% fee that you agreed to pay, we signed the listing contract 2 weeks ago, you will need to sign an addendum saying you agree to pay 2.5% to your listing agent, and you're going to offer 2.5% compensation to the buyer.
Correct.
Okay, or the buyer agent. You can change that. You can change that in that addendum.
Now,
talk to your agent, but you can change that right. I mean, this is the thing. The thing that's the benefit, which is also in some ways the burden, is the choice. The general public said, we don't have a choice. Like, we didn't know we had a choice. So the DOJ and NAR says, okay, we're going to give you choice.
Yeah.
But now having choice is super overwhelming because they didn't have all of these things available and they weren't aware of all these things before. So that can be overwhelming, but it's also a huge benefit because now you can say, okay, well, yes, the fee to the listing agent may be set, but now you don't have to pay the 2.5% to the buyer agent.
By the way, you didn't have to do before. You didn't have.
Yeah, we won't get into that, Joe, because I have very strong feelings on that. I have very strong feelings on that because the fact of the matter is like, yeah, it was negotiable before, but nobody told nobody. And yes, there were going to be people on this live stream that are going to comment on this live stream, and they're going to say, she just said they broke the rules. Yeah. Yes, you're right. You're right. Because I got in this business in 1996 and sat in a school of real estate, and they said, this is how you present commission.
Yeah.
And yes, we did. In Massachusetts, we are obligated to disclose what part goes to the listing agent, what part goes to the buyer agent. Yep. We do have that conversation, and I have had that conversation.
Yep.
But did I ever say to the buyer, did I ever say to the listing agent that you could not pay the buyer agent? No, because to be perfectly honest, that was something that was not even discussed in our
right,
any kind of literature. That wasn't something that came down from the top to say, okay, legally you can do this. Legally, just for those watching, legally, the buyer agent was not allowed to ask for compensation from the seller. The buyer agent could not put in the offer to ask for compensation. They could not do that before this change. So different things. But anyways, I digress. But yeah, it was negotiable, but the thing is it wasn't made, the general public wasn't aware, right? They weren't aware. So shame on our industry for that. But now we're making it better. We're going to do better, right? We're going to do better, Joe. Which, by the way, as a side note, so I was talking to a friend of mine, and she received a postcard in the mail for, I don't know if you've heard this, Joe, a postcard in the mail to get, like, if you sold a house over the last, oh, help me out, Joe. How many years is for the lawsuit?
I think it's from like November 2019 onward or something, or October 2019 onward.
Yeah, it's like 4 years or something, right? Or something, 3 or 4 years. If you sold a house during that time, you're entitled to part of that $418 billion. Well, I think it comes out to like $98 or something. You can fill out a form. There's like an attorney's office that's like spearheading it. And there's like a form online that you can fill out to get your share of the lawsuit. It's like $100. Hey, $100 is $100, but look, I would look into it. If you get a postcard, go on the website. Don't dismiss it. Hey, money is money, right? No worries. Ironwood Workman. This is, you can always watch it on the replay, my friend. Watch it on the replay, on the replay. Getting all tongue tied, and now my mouse isn't working. Here we go. Hello. Good to see you, Teresa. Is in Memphis. I was just in Memphis last spring. Took my daughter to Graceland. My 16-year-old for her 16th birthday. We went to Graceland, and it's a cool. I had probably the best fried chicken I've ever had in my life there. Well, that's good. That's interesting. So that must be a different kind of setup over there with when you own the land and the manufactured home. On top of it. Dina says $100 that'll get taxed, I'm sure. Yep.
Yep. Save 30%.
Hey, you know what? Before the gas prices get too much higher, what are you getting for gas out in West Coast?
I'm one of these yuppies that has an electric vehicle.
No, you do not. What kind what do you have? Like a Tesla? Do you have a Tesla or?
Yeah, I
or
have a
no?
Tesla, but we still have
Oh,
our Kia that we fill up. But we have solar on our house, so the electricity is basically free here. But I
you
think,
are SoCal, aren't you?
yeah.
Good
Uh,
Lord.
but I think for gas,
I'm in Massachusetts. Everybody's like, gas, more gas, gas engines. No, I'm just
yeah,
kidding.
I think we're about $4.50 a gallon right now.
Oh, okay. So that's not too bad.
No.
I think we're just under $4 here. Julie says, what if a buyer signs a contract with a buyer agent for 2.5%, but when that is presented with an offer on the house and the seller counters to pay 2%, can the agent keep the commission? What if the buyer signs a contract with the buyer agent for 2.5%, and then the presented offer and the seller counters to pay 2%? So here's the thing: when you have a contract with the buyer agent, it is up to you to pay that 2.5%.
Yep.
If the seller only gives you or them 2%, technically you are on the hook for an extra 0.5%.
Yep.
I would keep that in mind. And the reverse is true as well. So say, for example, your buyer agent, and this is where it gets, it's going to raise the bar for buyer agents because it's not guaranteed money anymore. A buyer agent before, and this is I think the huge improvement in all of this is, before, a buyer agent, doesn't matter the level of service they give you. It doesn't matter if they just open the door and then write the contract, they're getting paid. But now, not so much. I mean, if you negotiate a contract for 2% and you go see a house that says the seller is going to give the buyer 2.5% towards their buyer agent fee. Okay. So that money is going directly to you as the buyer. 2.5%. The seller says, I'm going to give any buyer a 2.5% concession on their purchase. You only owe the buyer agent 2%. Guess what? You get to keep that 0.5%. So I don't know, Joe. I would say I do think when it comes to, and I don't want to get too much in the weeds here, but I do think that because there's going to be a discussion, right? The door has been opened for discussion on negotiation with the buyer agent. You can alter whatever you pay them based on what's actually happening. If you're only going to look at one house,
Mm-hmm.
you can be like, hey, I'll pay you if I buy this house, but I don't know that I want to hire you full time. So this agreement's just for one house.
Yep.
I mean, I made a comment in the video that some agents might ask for money. And I think a lot of people thought that was going to be the way it was. And I was just offering it up as a possibility of something that we might see. I think we're going to see a lot of different creative things that agents are going to do to be competitive. You're offering your service as a buyer agent. I'm offering my service as a buyer agent. You'll do it for X percentage, but maybe I'll be like, hey, I'll do it for X amount of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
To win, to basically have like a value proposition. It's like going, leveraging the gas prices. You go, this guy's a 10 cents more, less, or 5%. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And so I think that's the way it's going to go. Some agents might say, hey, I know you want to look at this one house. I got to drive over there. If you have no intention of buying it, or maybe if you don't buy it, I want to be compensated for my time. Because a lot of, I got the comment a lot like, hey, why would I ever pay somebody to let me in the house? Well, a lot of sellers are not going to let buyers come in without an agent. I would never let a stranger walk through my house unattended.
No.
Like, hello,
No.
what world do we live in right now? Like, if you think about that, in an open house, even open houses, I'm not a fan of open houses. I make that perfectly clear to my clients. I just think there's a lot of liability in open houses. I think open houses are becoming a thing of a past, although it could be a good way for buyers to see houses without contracting with agents. But a regular showing, I don't think many sellers are going to have open their doors to just any old buyer. And so it's like, okay, so if you want to work, if you're required to have a buyer agent, right? And you're like, I don't want to buy, I don't want to do the thing. Well, then the buyer agent may be like, okay, well, you got to sign this thing and you owe me $150.
And
I'm
that's
never going to do that.
right.
But
And that's something that I've heard some agents talk about. I'm going to go do an hourly fee structure and a la carte structure, which I personally think is a terrible idea for the consumer. Imagine this right now, at any moment, my email could go off, my phone could ring, I could get a text message from a client that says, Joe, I have a question about this. I need help with this. What are your thoughts on this property? So on and so forth. And I don't charge that. There's no charge. Right now, currently, as it stands on August 6th, we get paid at closing. So some agents are saying, well, maybe I'll do is, hey, every time I'm billing in 15-minute increments. If you call me on the phone,
like an attorney.
Yeah, exactly. And I that's not something I agree with, but I'll tell you what, that's a great recipe for consumers to get absolutely rung
Screwed.
up in terms of billing. Because and then also too, you think to yourself, well, now, man, I have a question for my agent, but is this really
But I don't want to ask it.
Yeah. Is it really worth the $38 that it's gonna be, or whatever it comes out to be? So I don't think that's a good way to go about it. But I'm sure some agents out there will operate that way. And unfortunately, some people will probably get into agreements with them because it's going to look more affordable on the surface. But that's the world we're in now.
It is the world we're living in. And I think that adjustment is hard. Adjustment is going to be hard on both sides, but one step at a time. And I know I'm like a broken record because, on my channel, I'm always, I want you guys to be empowered. I want you to, advocate for yourself, and ask the hard questions of the agents. That being said, when you do find a good agent, when you do find an ethical agent, they will help guide you through this stuff. They will. But until that time, I want to arm you with the right information, because unfortunately we all know that that's not the same story everywhere. Julie says, sorry, can the agent change the commission? So that is going to be up to the individual MLS and their addendum policies. I'm going to tell you my point of view, Joe, and you can chime in on this, but if you have an agreement that you signed 2 weeks ago and the agent drastically tries to change it, say, for example, it's 5%. And now it's August 17th and you need to sign an addendum. And you say to your agent, okay, well, 50-50, depending on what state you're in. Again, in Massachusetts, like when you signed a standard listing agreement, it was separated already. Like it was determined which percentage was going to which agent up front. But just let's assume that didn't happen. Let's assume that it was both together, or maybe that you can say that it did happen. And you're like, okay, well, we're assuming you're paid 2.5%. If when you go to sign that addendum, if that agent turns around and says, you know what, with all the changes, my fee is now 3%, I think that that's in bad form. I think that that's sleazy. And I'd probably say, if it were me, I would say, you know what, I don't have to sign this addendum. You're fired. I'm going to find another agent. Because I think a good agent will honor and do the right thing and say, well, this is what we agreed on initially. We're going to keep that, but now you can, because it doesn't, I don't care if the seller pays the buyer agent or not. All I care is about getting the house sold, doing the things that gets the house sold for the most amount of money in the least amount of time. Right. And, but how we get there, I just want to make sure it causes the seller the least amount of stress, but the seller's in charge of the ship in that regard. What do you think?
Well, I agree with you. And I do think that finding an agent that is actually good, there's a difference between finding a real estate agent and finding a real estate agent that's good. Those are two very vastly different things.
Yep.
And real estate agents that are good are certainly worth their money. And it's one of those scenarios where you don't know how worth they are until you are done and you go, wow, actually, that was really straightforward. That wasn't so bad. Wow, I felt like I really knew what was going on because my agent was good about keeping me in the loop, answering my questions, telling me what's coming next, explaining documents and disclosures. And a lot of people don't understand that until it's done, it's over. And then you do, and you go, wow, I had a really good real estate agent. So, and that's part of it, right? Like, depending on what fees go on, I know I read ahead in the comments a little bit. I understand that, Maddie's talking about how I wish there was a way to incentivize agents to get the best deal. This is something that I hear all the time. I had actually a family friend of mine talk about, well, isn't it in your best interest to try to pump up the price for your client? And I said, no, absolutely not. It is in my best interest to get the best deal for my client, because guess what? The difference between a $30,000 price increase is maybe a couple $100 in commission, not enough to change things for me. However, if I can save my client $30K on the price of a property and then do a good job helping them secure that property, do you think they're going to refer me to someone else?
So you bring up a great point. Okay. So here's the thing. And whether you believe me or not, people believe me or not, this is the way I truly have run my business for 28 years. And I mean, I raised 2 kids and I feel very, 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 very fortunate and blessed to be able to say this business has taken care of me. I am not rich. Okay. I wish I have very little in retirement. I'll probably be working until I'm 100, but that's neither here nor there. But the way I've always done my business is lead with value.
Yep.
Do the right thing. The money will follow.
100%. 100% correct.
The money will follow. And to your point, when I'm working with a client, and at the beginning, you kind of work with everybody because you got to get your business off the ground. But as time goes on, you're able to start being a little bit more selective and work with the people that are going to be enjoyable to work with. And the trust element is there. It's a good, it's an enjoyable experience. And those people are coming usually by way of referral. My goal is, yes, the money is the byproduct, but the money is not the driver. The driver is to do what is necessary to get whatever goal that client needs achieved in the most, honest, ethical way. So at the end of the transaction, they're like, Jen, I couldn't have done this without you. I'm so happy.
Yep.
Now, yes, I get paid. Yes, I get paid. I need to eat. My kids need to eat, right? And I'm not going to apologize for it. Like I'm glad I don't have to live on mac and cheese. Like I'd be the size of my house, whatever. But the thing is that if I don't by doing the right thing, that person will tell their friends and tell their neighbors, and referrals is what makes this business go around. I have never bought leads. I've never done a park bench, a shopping cart. I've never paid for advertising on billboard. I don't do that stuff. I do it by word of mouth, and which relies on 100% solely by me doing a good job. That's it. By me taking care of my people. Because if they feel shorted or like I was lazy or I just cared about the money, they're not going to tell their friends.
Absolutely.
They're not going to care.
Yeah, it shows.
And then,
it shows.
It absolutely shows. But magically by doing that, the money follows. So to your point, if I truly, like I tell people, it's like, if you want to sell, I'm here to make that happen. If you don't sell, that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's go on to that. Whatever the next thing you want to put it off, that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm here to help you because I know if I do the right thing, the money falls organically. So the fact about making more money and all the things like, and all the agents that I refer, when people are asking for referrals, when people sign up on the form, which is in the description, if you need to be connected with an agent, I only refer to agents that have that same like mind. I belong to a coaching company that is comprised of agents that only build their business relationally. And that is the exact same way. I'm only going to refer to people that do have the same mindset that I do. And I know that those people are going to be well taken care of. So, let's see. So, no, you would be my go-to buyer. Buyer agent, maybe. I had an agent want me to call him up when I was ready to sell my house, and that man was giving me all the excuses of why he didn't want to do it. I had an agent want me to call him up when I was ready to sell my house, and that man was giving me all these excuses of why he didn't want to do it. He didn't want to do what? He didn't want to sell your house? Maybe you can elaborate on that, Dina. I'm a little confused on that one, Joe. I want to go back up because there's a lot. We skipped over a lot of comments, and I'm just so appreciative of you guys being active in this chat. Super appreciate it. And so I don't want to skip over anybody.
I think we left off on something about an open house, but I'm not sure. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah. So, Krista, thanks for being here. As a seller, can you offer a buyer commission fee after hearing the offer on the house? Absolutely, positively. So a buyer commission, offering a buyer commission or a compensation for the buyer fee can be part of your negotiation. So you get an initial, offer from the buyer and you're reviewing it, you can counter offer with the buyer fee. So, and I think that doing it that way, Joe, allows you to, gives you some flexibility, because if the offer comes in and it's weak in the price and the terms, you may not automatically want to offer a buyer agent fee. But if they come in strong in the price, strong on the terms, well, then let's dance. Then, yeah, you know what I mean? Then you'd be more apt to say, okay, you know what? I'll give you 2%.
And not only does it give you a way to vet the quality of the offer, but it also gives you the ability to vet the quality of that buyer's agent, right? Because if that buyer's agent, you go, hey, let's just call him Alex Smith. Hey, Alex Smith is the agent representing this buyer. Alex Smith represents a lot of buyers in this area. He's local in the community. He's been doing this for 11 years. This guy closes deals. He's a good buyer's rep. Yeah, that means that my experience as a seller is probably going to be better, and my home is more likely to close. So yeah, the offer is good. The agent's good. I want to work with these people as a seller. I'll give them 2.5% if it means I get my house sold, and it's stress-free, hassle-free, and I get my price.
It's not going to be a headache.
Right.
It's not going to be, I have a video dropping Thursday that actually is all that I kind of went into, like all the kind of sleazy tactics that buyer and buyer agents pull when they're trying to make offers and negotiate. And you know what? All that stuff matters. Mm-hmm. Having agents that are not on the up and up, somebody that is maybe talks a good talk, but then doesn't fulfill on their promises or pulls some sleazy moves. Having a good agent that knows what they're doing does avoid a ton of headache. Dina says, I don't want strangers walking in my house at all, agent or no agent. I don't blame you. Honestly, I'm a real estate agent and I got a little touch of anxiety. So I don't want people in my house either.
And it's interesting because people do the same thing they're like, open houses. Some want them, some don't want them. I really feel like that's also one of these things that comes down to the local marketplace. Like in my area, there's open houses every weekend. Every weekend there's open houses. Every weekend those open houses are attracting 30, 40, 50 people through. And in some areas they're like, open house. Nobody's had an open house since 1994. And you're like, okay, well, that's just how it is here. But it definitely does vary.
Yep. 100%. Ironwood Workman says, show the proof of funds that will help open the door. Yeah. Especially proof of funds. If you've got a buyer that's doing anything more than what would you say, Joe? Like anything more than 10%, 5 or 10% down payment. I want to see where the money's coming from. I don't want to know the bank account.
Oh no.
But I want to see that. They actually, you gotta know where the money, because legit people, newsflash, Joe. Okay.
Yeah.
This just in, buyers and buyers agents will lie.
Wow.
Who knew? Clark the realtor, good to see you, my friend. Hey, thanks for jumping on my stream. I said, yeah, not many people are attending open houses nowadays. Okay, so here's the little dirty secret. Okay, and this, I'm not talking about COVID, because COVID was unique in the sense that it was all about like proficiency to get as many people in, lined up, because it was a different time. So we're going to take COVID out of the situation as far as open houses are concerned. Typically, the only reason that a listing agent does an open house is to get more business for themselves, to get buyers for themselves. Less than 1% homes don't sell at open houses. You don't just like drive down the street and be like, oh, Sarah, there's a house for sale. You want to go see it? Oh, let's buy it. Because they went through an open house? No.
In all the open houses I've done, which is tons, it's happened one time. Yeah. Where a guy actually walked in the door and was like, this house is great, I'll buy it. And I was like, yeah, okay, what? Sure. And then I talked to him after the open house and he's like, here's my pre-approval, here's my proof of funds, I want to write an offer. And I was like, okay, I guess. And he did buy it. He ended up buying it. But that's...
You know what though? If he was because he was a serious buyer, he probably would have made an appointment to see it anyways.
Yep.
The open house. So technically it's like, did the open house really sell that house, or was it just convenient?
Yeah.
So I think open houses are convenient for lazy buyer agents. That's the way it's been anyways up to this point. So in other words, you're working with a buyer agent and it's the weekend and the buyer agent's like,
So I got a
I don't want to go meet them. Oh wait, there's an open house at 123 Main Street, Mr. Buyer. Why don't you just go? And you let me know. You let me know how it goes. And now the buyer agent doesn't have to do it.
Yeah.
Lazy. That I can't tell you how many times I get phone calls. Let me finish my thought because I'll forget it. And I don't want to talk over you. But I don't know how many times I have received phone calls from buyers. I put a new listing on the market, and the first thing the buyer's agents say is, "Are you having an open house this weekend?" Because they're too busy or they don't want to. It's a convenience for the buyer agent. So I am not a fan of opening up someone's house because I cannot follow strangers through the house.
Yeah,
I can't. I have no idea. And we had a situation about it was during. It was right before COVID, and we had a string for like several months of these people that would go to the open house. They'd go to the medicine cabinet. They'd ruffle through the medicine cabinet. Some of them would leave windows unlocked. Yep. If the agent didn't check the windows then they break in at night. Like, no. An agent in my office got attacked at the end of an open house.
Yeah.
Several years ago, pre-COVID, she got attacked because it was, she's fine. Thank goodness. But anyways, all right, I'll stop talking. You were going to say,
it's interesting. When I have clients, so in my area, what's going on that I've seen a little bit, some of these agents do, which I personally do not agree with, but every agent can work their own way to a certain extent. Agents are putting houses on the market either like late Thursday night or late Friday night. And then they're saying, or they're putting them on like Wednesday afternoon. And then they're saying,
yep,
you can't see it until the open house on Sunday. And then offers are due Tuesday. We're going to review offers Tuesday. So you're like, okay, well, I really don't have another time. And then I always accompany my clients to the open house because I feel like that's my job, is to go with them to view the house so that I can critique it, give them my thoughts, my professional opinion, and so on and so forth.
Yep.
But I think that that's a little bit of I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, maybe unfair for buyers and their agents to say, hey, this house is on the market, but you can't see it until the open house, and offers are due 2 days after the open house. And it's like, well,
yeah,
what kind of game is this that we're playing where so it makes it a little ridiculous.
There's a lot of games. There's at least this just in, real estate agents have been known to play games.
Yeah. It's true.
Oh boy. Yikes. Maddie B, I don't think we did this question, right? I don't think so.
Oh yeah, that's the
I wish
one.
hope.
That's the one we talked about.
I think you were referencing it earlier about is there a way to structure these buyer agreements to incentivize the agent to get the buyer the best deal rather than just the highest commission? I'm fine with paying for good help. I will just follow that up by saying I wish there was. But now you're talking like how do you convince somebody to do the right thing? I think I think the person either does or they doesn't, or they they do or they don't.
I knew what you meant.
Oh my goodness. Fatigue is setting in, my friend. Fatigue is setting in. And I know you have to jump on a call in like 10 minutes.
But actually, I got an email that call got pushed to 4:45, so I've got a little bit more time.
Fabulous. I was going to say, if you have to jump at any time, Joe, I'm just going to keep going because I want to get these questions as long as people
got a great chat there
on the stream.
Your chat asks excellent questions. These are some
they
smart
really do. Hey, I got a great community here. I have an awesome community. So I guess the long and short of it, Maddie, is I wish there were. But I think it's going to be the burden on the buyer to vet out the agent. Like if you feel like you have to incentivize, then you probably shouldn't hire that agent.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? Like you should feel that from step one, from the interview process. When I say interview, I mean, I'm talking like I interview buyers as much as buyers interview me. I will not show, and this is as true as I'm sitting here, I will not show a property. And this is no joke. I will not show a property unless I either have a Zoom, preferably a Zoom call. And that Zoom call is at least an hour because I want to know, what their situation is. Tell me their backstory. Like I want to get a feel for whether these people are, what their goals are. The goals realistic? Are we going to be a good fit? And they're kind of getting a feel for me too, to see if we jive. But either a Zoom call or a phone call to do a full-on consultation, like a conversation before we even get in the car. And then we get on to, okay, pre-approval and all the things. That is a must. It's a must. And if you're not accustomed to doing that, yes, it's a pain, but I think that's how you answer that question. You know what I mean? Let's see. We got to that Dina question. Oh yes, there we go. Open houses are a great way for you to meet to meet agents in a non-stress environment. To a point, to a point, I guess, depending on the agent.
And depending on the environment too. If it's a really busy open house, that can alter the way that the agent interacts with you, because if there's a bunch of people flowing into, I mean, I've done open houses where there's 60 people in the house at one time. And there's a lot. You're trying to answer a lot of questions. You're trying to address a lot of things. But certainly if the open house is a little bit more on the quiet side, that's a great time for a potential consumer who might be vetting different agents in their local marketplace to say, hey, what do you know about this neighborhood? What do you know about the market? What have you seen? And you can just ask a few questions, build some rapport, and then see if there's someone worth working with.
100%. 100%. Croy, how would you say Croy West?
Croy West?
Yeah. Croy West. What's your take on HOA? So here's what I'm going to say on that, because that is a loaded question. So that conversation, I don't know if you caught the live stream from last week. Angie and I, we went on like an hour conversation that opened up a whole can of worms. However, I'm going to tell you that next week I'm working on the research now. I'm dropping a video on HOAs next week, and how these HOAs are putting liens on properties. Some of them are foreclosing on properties, and kind of digging into that. So I'm going to be talking more about HOAs coming up. So I don't want to sidestep, but stay tuned, because that's a conversation we're definitely going to be getting into deeper for sure. Dina says, oh, he referring to the guy that
didn't want to sell her house.
That he called
please bag.
He's a self-employed realtor. You know what? Actually, to be honest, we all are.
We all are.
Every single one of us. When you're a real estate agent, you do not collect a W-2. We're all 1099s. We all pay our own taxes. We all pay our own expenses. Some agents have offices that supply a little bit of support with like business cards and things of that nature. but we use our own cars, our own gas, pay for our own insurance. Like we are self-employed. It's a very interesting industry because you would think that we're all, working for a company. It's like we sign a contract with that company as a subcontractor. We're all subcontractors. So it's all about, you get out what you put in. His footprint is mostly $1 million lakefront property because I don't have so he's a realtor snob. That's what he is.
Yeah, I can't stand when agents take that approach. I can just tell you, just in my own market, I've sold houses from 1.6 million all the way to 300,000, and it's foolish when agents say your home's not worth my time or you're not worth my time. It doesn't make any sense to me because that agent doesn't know how many referrals they could get from you, right? What if you refer them to 4 people? And each of those 4 people have $400,000. That's foolish.
Yep.
And that's a great sign that that's an agent you shouldn't work with.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, David. Oh, you are such a champion of everything that, you're such a good guy. He's a stand-up guy. Mr. David Matney, he's out in Omaha, Nebraska. I'm telling you, if you are looking to sell or buy a house in Omaha, you got to look up David Matney. He's a stand-up guy. He really is. He's always here. And let me tell you something. You need, if you're like, David, I forgot my shoes at home. He would give you his shoes for the showing. He would. He would do. Hopefully that never happens. But that's just the kind of the guy he is. Ironwood says, I buy damaged houses, so open house is a must. Very interesting. Very, very, very interesting. Honeybee, welcome to the chat. Do new build homes still pay the buyer agent? So that's going to depend on the builder. There's a lot of builders, like we're seeing a lot of all the incentives. It's going to be interesting to see if they try to shut buyer agents out to save some cash or not, to try to bring buyers in. But it really is going to depend. It's builder to builder. Right, Joe?
Yeah, it is. And that's always been a thing. A lot of builders, at least in my area, don't offer percentage. They just offer a flat fee, which still certainly probably will happen. But yeah, I don't think this rule is going to affect new builds too much. A lot of the times consumers go direct to the builder and use their in-house agent and their in-house lender. That doesn't mean you have to. If you are looking at a new build, you probably should get your own agent where you'll have to sign a buyer's representation agreement with. And then if the builder does want to pay you, then they can help compensate. But that's kind of what I'm seeing in my area is that most builders are just offering a flat fee to an agent, and that probably will continue, would be my guess.
100%. She goes on to say that he tried to tell me that that people buying houses in my price range have financing problems. I'm sorry. Do you have a crystal ball? You know every single financial situation of every buyer in a particular price range? Okay, so what I'm not gonna this is a you know what, I'm not gonna swear because on the podcast Jackie and I we let our hair down and all the things, but I'm gonna be respectful. I'm not gonna go there. So I told him I've worked in mortgage for over 20 years and I see millionaire loans fall through all the time. You know what? This is an interesting thing, depending on where you are. I mean, if you're in fancy SoCal, like where Joe is, they got the money and all the things, but maybe not. A lot of people that are driving those Mercedes and Teslas and fancy cars, they can't afford them. They think they have money and they don't have money. The houses are mortgaged to the hilt. The guy with the $250,000 ranch is way richer than the guy with the big $1 million house, because the guy with $250,000 ranch was conservative and saved his money and has equity, whereas the guy with the $1 million house. Anyway, I digress. David says we're seeing that in our market too, and then Reds Jags. Thanks for joining. Very common in Mass to do that too. Another Mass person. Yeehaw. Massachusetts. I'm not going to call you. I'm not going to say what they call us in Massachusetts. It's not very nice. It's a, yeah. I am like you, Jen. I interview everyone just like they do me. I think you got to, because honestly, it's also like, hey, you know what? I take this very seriously. It's a big time investment. It's a big time investment because we don't charge hourly. I don't want to get in a situation where I invest 10, 20, 30, 40 hours or more and it's it's almost a guaranteed dead end because the buyer is not a good fit. We're not a good fit together or whatnot. So, let's see here. And Maddie says, open houses in my area don't get a lot of traffic. I only have conversations with agents when there are no potential buyers in the house. True. Yeah, I think, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if that changes, you know what I mean, over time, as these changes kind of set in. You know what I mean?
Well, it certainly will, because now if you want to have an in-depth conversation with an agent at an open house, you've got to sign an agreement. So gone are the days of now, the way that it was presented to us out here, at least in California, is if the buyer asks you a question that could reasonably have the answer on a flyer or one sheet about the house, that's okay, right? You can give them that information. But if the buyer starts asking you about, well, what terms is the seller looking for, or what's the pulse of the neighborhood, and what's the average days on market of this neighborhood, and specifics about the house, they got to sign a buyer representation agreement. So
I disagree with that. I'm going to disagree
I wish I was wrong.
Yeah, no, and that might be, and for certain, I'm going to respect the fact that might be California specific, but outside, if you're not in California, the listing agent, if I'm hearing it correctly, the listing agent, if the buyer starts asking questions, then will be forced to also be a dual agent, where they represent both the buyer and the seller. And that's not okay. That doesn't jive with me, because, and I'm going to talk about this in the video I'm dropping on Thursday about dual agents. I'm adamantly opposed to dual agency. And for those watching, so dual agency is when the listing agent wears both hats. They're representing the seller and the buyer at the same time. At the same time, it's impossible. You can't actually negotiate fully for a seller or the buyer when you're representing both parties. It doesn't work. So I just don't know how that works, Joe, because I mean, so in Massachusetts, if a buyer comes to me and I'm the listing agent, a contract with the seller, a buyer comes in unrepresented and starts asking me questions, I'm going to answer that question as if I'm a representative of the seller. I'm only going to give them information that the seller would give that buyer themselves. So they're not getting any inside scoop. They are not.
Yeah.
What's the pulse of the seller? They want to sell. Like, why are they selling? Because it's time to sell. Like, you're not getting any information from me because that's all leverage, right?
Yeah.
If they want to make an offer, that's going to be a different story. Then, at that point, then I talk to my seller and I ask them, are you okay with an unrepresented, negotiating with an unrepresented buyer? And that's going to be a different kind of conversation. Those are conversations that because the buyer, when you have a buyer's agent, now that buyer agent can vet out that buyer and get a feel for that buyer and guide that buyer. That buyer may be making an offer and they may not know what the heck they're doing. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it becomes sticky. Back before August 17th, we mentioned this earlier, if that scenario were to happen, the buyer makes an offer, even if the listing agent still represents the seller, if that transaction goes through, the listing agent keeps the whole commission. Right? Now, no. Listing agent only gets paid their fee. That's it. Unless they have a clause in their contract or something of that nature. So, separate negotiated item in the listing contract. So what's the incentive for the listing agent? I know I wouldn't do it for liability's sake. It's like you can present it, but I'm telling you, I'm going to poke holes in that offer and I'm going to rip it to shreds because I want to protect my seller. I'm going to ask that buyer a million questions. They're not, and they're not going to know what to say. So it's difficult to navigate because where's the line that you cross that you're like, you're when you're negotiating, you and I are negotiating, you represent the buyer agent. I'm going to ask you a ton of questions. If you happen to have loose lips and tell me stuff that you probably shouldn't tell me, guess what? I'm telling my seller. But that's on you. But when there's no agent, gets a little bit sticky, right? It becomes a little bit sticky. So,
and that's why the whole having people have to sign a form to discuss a property in open house is ridiculous, because just because someone is asking you questions about the neighborhood or questions about the house that aren't just how many bedrooms are there, doesn't necessarily mean that I need to be, nor should I be, their agent. But unfortunately, with the new rules, that's what it means. That's what they have to do. The moment that you start, talking more in depth about the house, the rule is it's got to be documented. Something has to be signed that says this is what's happening. Now, also keep in mind that agent hosting the open house may not be the listing agent. Right?
That's true.
So
that's very true. It might be an agent that is, someone on a team or another agent in their office,
or it could be outside their office too. It could be any licensed agent that decides to hold the open house. I don't particularly like doing that. I don't like just giving my open house.
Yeah, we don't have that in Massachusetts. Like if you're not
every once in a while you get that, and it's really weird. But yeah, so you could
it's interesting.
You could walk, a consumer could walk into the open house and start asking in-depth questions and say, well, maybe I do want to make an offer. And, and it's like, well, okay, before this goes any further, we've got to sign an agreement if we're going to start talking about details of the house, whatever. And all of a sudden now, you're like, okay, well, you're going to help me with this house. And that agreement that they sign, it can be just for that one house. It's not like this is some binding exclusive agreement that locks this agent into, being your agent for the next 2 years of your life or something ridiculous. It can be just for that one house. So again, as the rules change, a lot of things will have to be adjusted to. And that's just one of the things that I thought that was very, very interesting, that I don't know if that's actually helpful to consumers to have to, sign because they want to know more information about the house that they're looking at.
I don't think that's consumer friendly at all. David says, as far as offering compensation, he actually corrected, is in our market, we're seeing builders still offering compensation for sure. He says, oops, I meant builders. We got what you meant. Judy says, open house is here. The actual agent isn't. Oh, there you go. Open house is here. The agent is actually doing the open house. Someone from their office is there, but doesn't know anything about the house and can't answer my questions. Now, I will tell you, when I was brand new, that was like, when I was not brand new, maybe I was, newish, still green, but able to survive, try to get as much information. But a lot of these bigger agents, like, they can't manage tons of properties, so they have help in the office. And so I don't know how much of a service it is to the seller, to be like, okay, stand here and let strangers walk through the house.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where if you're going to be that agent, and like you said, younger agents, this happens all the time. I was on a team environment for many years where I hosted open houses for a very prominent listing agent that had a lot of listings. When I knew I was going to have an open house, I treated that like a school assignment. So if I was going to have an open house, I reviewed the file, I reviewed the information about the property, and I wanted to be prepared for any question that might come up during that open house. There's many agents that don't do that. In fact, there's many agents that go to the open house, they open up their laptop and they sit in front of their computer for 3 hours. And I've never understood that. That always has boggled my mind. that's not good for the
Well-
seller or the possible buyers.
So I'm going to tell you why he's doing that. He's doing that to pacify the seller. So when the seller says, okay, you're charging this amount of money, what are you going to do for me?
Right.
I'm going to do an open house. Oh, okay. It's something that they physically see being done. It's an easy checkbox for the agent to say, okay, I'm off the hook on that because I'm going to do an open house, even though they're terrible at doing the open houses, and there's very, very, very little benefit. There's always going to be there's going to be the exception to the rule. There's always going to be the exception to the rule, right?
Yep.
Different types of communities, so it's not across the board, but I'm talking like typically, right? But it's just an easy checkbox instead of the agent having a intelligent conversation with the seller to say, okay, here's what I'm going to do to expose your house to as many people as possible. Not open houses is not it. Dina says, oh, I have an awesome realtor now. Yay! Woohoo!
Awesome realtors are good.
She and I spoke for 2 hours and we clicked. She even said she wished every seller was like me. Yay! LOL. But this other guy just pissed me off so bad. Well, you know what? Sometimes we gotta like kiss the frogs before we find the prince, right? As the saying goes. I've seen that too, JB, where there's an open house and without any. You've seen open houses where there are without any agents present. Sometimes companies do that too. That's crazy. I mean, I guess
I've never heard of or seen that. That blows my
mind. Are you talking about new construction, Clark? You're talking about like new construction open houses, maybe? I mean, I can't imagine having a pre-owned home seller with nobody there. Like,
just like, do you leave the front door open? Like, do you just like with a sign that says just go take a look?
Maybe in a community with like a model home type of thing. I don't know. Cowfi says, could you break down the commission structure for a seller's agent? How much of the commission, say, on a $500,000 home at 3%, does the agent realize after their expenses? It depends.
This is a tough question.
So here's what I'm going to tell you. If the 3%, the first thing that needs to be answered, which is not standard, is how much goes to the agent's office. That could be anywhere between 5% to 50%.
Yeah,
honestly. It could be up to 50%. Yeah. And if you're in a team, it could be even more.
Yep.
So that's the first check. Now, the second check is going to be, okay, what state do you live in the tax bracket? So we pay state taxes, federal taxes, and self-employment tax.
Yep, we got the same thing.
15%. I'm like, way to hit the little guy that's just trying to make a living. An extra 15% in taxes. Then you have your expenses, and the expenses are going to vary depending on the agent. I tend to invest heavily into my business, so I have, background. The software that I use for this stream cost me almost $400 a year, just for the software to do the live stream. When I do, Zoom, costs me $500 a year just for the Zoom software to have unlimited Zoom time. So I mean, I think it might be less than $500, but it's in that realm. But you see what I'm saying? Like, some agents will make that investment in the business to bring that better level of service to their clients, and some won't spend a penny because they can't afford, or they're not willing to. So it really, really does. It really does depend. It really, really does depend. I will tell you the average income, Joe, and maybe I'm thinking back, they post it every year, but the average income, the net income for a real estate agent in the US is like $42,000 a year.
Yep. There's a lot that goes into it.
That's no joke.
No,
that's no joke. For those that all the folks that say we're raking in all this great money, I make money for it. I couldn't pay my mortgage and raise 2 kids on 42, but that's because I put the time in.
Well, just like
into my business and all the things. It's like anything else. Right.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah, it's a great question, but it's hard to quantify because it is so subjective. So subjective. Oh, North Cal is a North Cal. Manny says you will have to sign a form that doesn't obligate either party. However, if you don't sign the form, the agent can't talk with me.
Correct.
Yeah, California is a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
You guys, you know what? You got your weather. I think you can keep the weather. I want to stay in Massachusetts. Bike contest. Hey, thanks for being here. If you sign a buyer's agent, if you sign a buyer's agent, it must be agreement. Is there a way to drop them if they don't perform? I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say that real estate agent contracts can be easily broken. If the agent's not performing, you tell them that they're fired. Now, legally, it is a binding agreement. Agents they're not going to go down kicking and screaming, because at the end of the day, all you have to do is provide proof that they weren't delivering on the promise. And if you go to small claims court, they're going to lose. Plus they'll get it. Plus an agent will not take the chance of having to dig in their pocket for small claims courts to reinforce this contract. You know what? They're going to walk away. They're going to kick and scream. They're going to try to bully you. A lot of it, right, Joe? Like, I've seen it firsthand.
And that's also
that speaks for this. That speaks for the agent. If and sometimes you don't click. And I've always like, if there's friction,
I'm the same way.
Just like, okay,
it's not.
You know what? You want out? I'm good.
If you
the
don't
feeling's probably mutual.
If you don't want to work with me, then I don't want to work with you. No offense. But if I don't want to have to work with someone where I feel like there's friction or there's not a good relationship there. And it also depends on your area too. Here in California, if you have a signed buyer's agent agreement, and even if it's exclusive, all you have to do is send an email that says, I no longer want to be your client. And within 30 days of that email being received by the agent, that agreement is dissolved.
Very interesting. I'll have to look that up to find out what the requirements are in Massachusetts on that. And as opposed to, well, I mean, I think the only thing would be is if you were then turning around and working with another buyer agent, you would want to be formally released from that first contract.
Yeah. And
before making an offer on another property, right? You want to make sure that that tie is broken,
and there is some language in the buyer's agent agreement that says, well, you still get procuring costs. So if you buy a house after you've dissolved this agreement, but it's one of the homes that I showed you or I found or we toured together, then it's me. That's me. But not
necessarily, Joe. Procuring cause is really hard to prove. So those watching, procuring cause means that agent was the reason why you bought or sold the home. They were the instigators that led to the contracts that bought the home. So I show a house, right, to you. I was the one that brought you the house, but then like there was a falling out and you couldn't stand me. So, okay, fine. Feeling was mutual. I'm out of here. Whatever. You start working with another agent. You're like, you know what? I actually like that house. Now that you talk to that other agent, now that other agent starts giving you information, guides you through the process, writes the offer. Who was truly the procuring cause? I'd open the door, but that other agent was the one that helped you through the offer process. If that other agent didn't help you, then would you have bought that house? Like, that agent is the one that actually brought the offer in. So where's procuring cause? It's not clear line. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's a really, really, really tough thing to prove. But anyways.
Yeah. And I think it would depend if you had an exclusive buyer agency agreement, then that's going to aid in that agent being able to say, well, I've got procuring cause because we had an exclusive agreement where I'm your agent and you're my client. And then if that dissolves later on, but at the end of the day, it's up to a judge to interpret. And that's always a guessing game.
You got it. Absolutely. Positively. I like it when we have a conflict of opinions, Joe. It's always fun. It's nothing personal. Because the extra work, did the agent to deserve the whole commission? Yeah, it's debatable. Maddie says, my understanding is consistent with what Jen's saying. Hey, thank you. I wish my kids would feel that way. My 22-year-old would get in line and be like, my thinking is consistent with what my mother says, but she's 22, so that's a whole nother ball of wax to unpack. Where I live, listing agents sometimes, other than ask other agents to hold open houses, very apparent when the agent doesn't really know much about the house. It's like, what's the point? What's the point, right?
Yeah. What is
who staffs the open house will be a criteria when I sign a listing contract. Yeah, and I would ask them, like, why are we going to do an open house? Here's the thing. If the buyers are serious, when a buyer sets up a showing to see that house, they're going to need an agent. Okay, check. One thing you don't have to worry about. The other thing is that agent's going to make sure that that buyer is actually qualified to buy the house. I'm not going to meet a buyer. Like, when I do that interview, the first thing I ask is, okay, well, what's the finances? Like, are you paying cash? You're financing? If you're financing, you have a pre-approval. Like, we're not going to see a house unless you have that in order. Because it's not, number one, you're not qualified to look at it. Number two, if you like it, you're not in a position to do anything about it. So it kind of doesn't make sense, right? If you have the buyer walking in an open house, any Joe Schmo can go to that house. Your neighbor, your nosy neighbors, the guy trolling on the internet who just wants to know what the house looks like because they like your furnishings, doesn't matter. I would say, I don't know, I'm a fan of nixing the open house entirely and just go with individual showings, and that way it's more controlled. You know exactly who's coming into the house. I have seen open houses that don't even have agents on site. I mentioned that. That's crazy. Absolutely crazy. I'm just kind of going down here. The chat is just absolutely awesome.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
this is just so fun. Maddie says, are the houses being sold by Open Door? We don't have Open Door up here. So he says that's about right. And then Marie G says, yes, the keypad is locked. They call the number on the agent's yard sign. They get the lockbox code and the buyer walks through. I only see it on vacant property and people like it because it's easy. I guess if you have a property that you've moved out of and you don't care and it's like your furnishings aren't there and it's empty, I can see where that, and it's the keypad, typically they track it so they know who's coming in and who's going out.
That is right for a squatting situation. That is right.
Amen, Joe. Can you imagine? Somebody like, here's the code, and the next thing you know, they're like, wait a minute. You got Chinese food and your mattress is there. And,
yeah.
Oh, hello.
Why am I leaving?
Depending on what state you're in.
You're talking to California. You're talking to California here.
Yeah. In New York has super favorable tenant laws. It's rough, right? Yeah. Forget about it. Ross Life, this is a good question. Ross says, what's the difference between a broker and an agent? So
good question.
The broker is, the hierarchy is you have your agency, and that agency might be a standalone agency, mom and pop. It might be a franchise of a larger agency. Remax has a franchise, our individual franchises. It could be a part of a bigger company like Cole Banker has, it's a company that has individual offices, but all under the umbrella of that one company. In order to run, and this is the law, in order to run one of those offices, you have to have a broker's license. Broker's license basically means that it's a lot of business vernacular. You have to know how to decipher the E&O insurance, and you have to decipher liabilities and running the business of the office. It has everything to do with just running the business of the office, right? An agent works for a broker. So I'm an agent. I do not have my broker's license. I have no interest in becoming a broker or running my own office. It's a lot of work. It's very expensive to run an office. I just as soon pay a fee to my broker for the brokerage and let them take care of all that business. Okay. And I can just do the thing that I do well. So, but in terms of from a consumer level, there's not a lot I would say that a broker has to have more hours logged, right, Joe? You have to have more hours logged. You have to have more experience logged. So there is, in certain circumstances, there is going to be an experiential advantage, could be, of hiring a broker. But I would say, like, I would go toe to toe with the number of homes that I've sold. I calculated one day it was like over 800, something like that. The number of transactions, which equals how many problems I had to solve, how many different type of buyers, how many different types of sellers. Like, it's becoming very, very, very seldom that I see a situation that I haven't seen before, which is huge benefit to the people that I work for. So I would go toe to toe in terms of the benefit that I bring versus a broker. But do you have anything to add to that, Joe?
I actually, you covered that really in depth. Not a huge functional difference between a broker and a realtor. Really, as to break it down, a realtor has to work under a broker. A realtor can't just go off and do their own thing. I'm a realtor just like you are, Jen. I'm not a broker. I can't have, Realtor Joe's real estate company. I can't. I'd have to find a broker that wants to do that. But when it comes down to things, there's no huge functional difference. And in fact, a lot of the times the brokers actually have less transactional experience than their agents. Not all the time.
Yes.
Because
they're running the office.
Yeah. My two brokers happen to be active selling brokers. So they do quite a bit of business, but that's rare. Most of the time brokers are more focused on running the office than they are selling to a client or representing clients most of the time.
Let's see. Marie says also the open house on your own is good for people. Are you talking? You must be talking about the. I'm looking at the chat to try to decipher the different comments. You must be talking about going to an open house like an open door that is individual for people that or couples that don't have normal hours like nurses. Yes. Sort of coordinating with others. Absolutely. I mean, I think that it's the type of thing that you have to coordinate that with the listing agent, coordinate that with the buyer's agent, have conversation. If I'm working with a nurse, if I'm working with a first responder that has odd hours or whatnot, to be honest, you can schedule an appointment like you would an open house to a certain degree. You say, I'm available Sunday at 2. And that's the time you were planning to do the open house. Hypothetically, and they're not doing an open house, then we'd schedule the time then. But I see what you're saying, 100%. It's not a one size fits all. Yeah, Iron Man says, he says, I don't know, he or she. Maybe I do not know what an open house is. I think I need a showing now and not an open house. How I need to see the house before. Yes. Yep. Yeah, you definitely. I mean, open houses. If there's an open house to just kind of get a feel for the property. But definitely like a one-on-one showing is like, you don't want to make an offer based on an open house. You want to get in depth. Yeah, Dina, I'm with you 100%. I wouldn't want somebody walking through my home, regardless if it's empty or not. Yeah. Break-ins and squatters. Oh man, this is just great. This is just awesome. And I think we're gonna cap it off here. Clark says, you might have mentioned this earlier, but do you think with rates coming down, it will cause home prices to raise in an economy where prices are too high and people's income may not equate to the prices? I think that it absolutely has the potential to do so. Yep, I think that if, depending on where that tipping point is, buyers are holding off right now. They're holding back across the country. They're holding back because I think they're just tired, and they're sick and tired of of being sick and tired. And they're like, we're just going to wait. It looks like things are going to happen. We're just going to sit tight and see it. We want that house, but you know what? We're not willing to pay what the seller's asking. So we're going to just let those prices, tick downward. At some point in time, those rates are going to get to a point where it's like, I don't want to miss out on this rate. I don't want to miss out on in the 5s because it's not going to be here forever. Maybe we will give the seller what they're looking for. And then it has the potential to snowball. Because the other thing that I'm seeing in what I'm hearing is that when that happens, a lot of sellers are going to come to the market. So we're going to have an increase in inventory because they're going to want those that want to sell and then buy another home. They're going to put their house. So there'll be increased inventory. There'll be more opportunity because there'll be more affordability. And because you'll have more energy and more people in that market, now there's that, because that's still so lopsided with the number of buyers versus the number of sellers. It's going to take a lot to get that balance in. Like we're not even close to having a balance for most of the country, right? I think it has the potential of the prices going. I truly, Joe, I don't see it doing what it did during COVID. I don't think we're going to see another 2021.
No,
I really, I think that ship has sailed.
But we're not going to see.
Sailed.
We're not going to see. We are going to see again. And I preface this with like, this is so hyper local. Like I don't even mean just state to state. I mean like not even county to county, like city to city, hyper local. In my area, if rates going down, I think is absolutely going to cause prices and buyer interest to go up. Will we see a pop in inventory? Probably, but I think that pop in inventory will be quickly absorbed by the increase in demand as buyers feel that houses are more attainable.
Yep, 110%, 110%. So it's going to be interesting, but you know what? We will wait and see.
Yeah.
Because
Jen, your
anything
people are great. Your chat, like we could do this like all night, like if we could. But
you could. My tummy is rumbly. Really, Winnie the Pooh. My tummy is rumbly. It's 8:00 where I'm at. So
you've got good people.
I do. I'm so very fortunate to have such an awesome community on my channel. So hey, who's this guy?
Oh, who is that
guy? This guy? Oh my goodness, look at that. Is that you? So hey, anybody who's looking in the Claremont, California, SoCal area, if you want a good seller or buyer agent, go to Joe. Do the right thing. Go to Joe. He'll take good care of you. And Joe, I so appreciate you jumping in on this conversation and all this kind of stuff. It's always great to have you on the stream because you always have awesome things to say, good conversation, good points of view, and all the things.
It's always a pleasure.
I love
coming here, and I love talking with you, and I love talking with your great chat. They've got great questions, and it's been a lot of fun. Can't wait to do it again.
It is. I can't wait. And for those that are watching, if you are looking for an agent outside of Joe's area and you want some help, please let me know. There's a link in the chat in the description below. You fill that out. Super important. This is super important. When you fill it out, you're going to get an email with a calendar link. You need to schedule that call because I need to have a conversation with you in order to match you with the right agent. I really want to understand who you're looking for in an agent and what your pain points are, what your experiences have been, so that I can make sure that it's a success for you, in working with that agent. So super important to watch for that return email. Sometimes it goes to spam, but by all means, because I've been doing this business for a couple minutes there, Joe. So I kind of know some people, and I feel like I can read people really well. So I snuff out and don't send people just to the, just anybody. But I think, hey, thank you everybody for tuning in. This has been such a great conversation. Thank you, Joe, for joining an awesome conversation.
My pleasure.
Hey, everybody, be nice to someone this week. Check in on your neighbor. If you're in the hot areas, hot or stormy down in Tampa, if you're in that hurricane region, check in on your neighbors, help them out, be kind. Got anything to add, Joe?
Thank you. Thank you to the chat. This has been so much fun. And everybody be safe out there.
Be good. All right, we'll see you next week. Everybody have a great week, everyone. All right. I love this music. This is very California.
It is.
Yeah.